Hello, and welcome back to All Things Lord of the Rings with your host Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone. Just another reminder, uploads are happening to both YouTube and Twitch, and I feel like Twitch has a better alert system set up for when new things are happening. So if you want to catch the release of my vids, follow me on both. When last we left off, after Fingon had saved Maedhros from the torments of being shackled by the wrist off the spires of Thangorodrim, and having to lose his hand to be saved in the process, the Council of the Noldor worked out a deal with King Thingol that they could have a pretty generous area of land in Beleriand as long as they didn't go messing with Thingol's own people who lived there. It seemed fair, but the Sons of Fëanor, with the exclusion of Maedhros of course, didn't like Thingol's tone, and little brother Caranthir started talking some hot mess. So Maedhros took his brothers with him to found their own area called the March of Maedhros, so that firstly, they could help protect against Morgoth from that angle, and secondly, to keep any further hot mess talking from screwing up their proper relations with the rest of the Noldor. Caranthir got the easternmost portions of that area, and he and his people climbed the Blue Mountains, also known as Ered Luin. There they met the dwarves, the first contact between the elves of the west and the adopted children of Ilúvatar. Now, Caranthir wasn't exactly nice to them, and they didn't exactly like his cocky attitude, but they both loved building and hated Morgoth, and so they worked things out for the most part, and dwarves began once again to come into Beleriand now that Morgoth was pretty well fenced in, and they learned a lot of cool smithing stuff from the Noldor there, and a great profit was had by all. Today we're going to talk about two specific princes of the Noldor, Finrod and Turgon. Finrod was the eldest son of Finarfin, and Turgon was the second son of Fingolfin. To start us off, let's set the scene. For 20 years, by the reckoning of the new sun and moon, the situation had become pretty stable. Morgoth was locked up tighter than a clam in its shell in Angband, and the Noldor forces had him nice and tightly held in, having expanded to nearly surround his dirty-ass area, all except for the Iron Mountains on the northern side of Thangorodrim. Fingolfin felt it was a good time to throw a celebration, because life had been good under the sun and the moon these 20 years, and they felt like they had cause to celebrate. Everyone from the elves was invited to the great feast, which was called Mereth Aderthad, the Feast of Reuniting. And from all over Beleriand, elves did come. Maedhros and his brother Maglor, lots of green elves from the forests of Osiriand, Círdan from the Havens with his entourage in tow. Thingol only sent 2 people, Mablung and Daeron, but they were welcome. Everybody had a good old time, healing wounds and making friends, swearing oaths of loyalty and holding councils with each other. Lots of the Noldor started to feel like Fëanor was right, that it really was a good idea to come to Middle-earth and start their own thing. And it really seemed to be working out for them. Morgoth was held at bay, life was good, there was prosperity. You'd think I'd have to say something about something spoiling this feast, but no, it was just a good time to be on Noldor. Hell, it was a good time to be an elf in Middle-earth. 30 years later, Turgon left the city of Nevrast where he lived, and went and grabbed Finrod from the Isle of Tol Sirion. These two were buds, and they just wanted to hang out and get away from the northern mountains for a while, get some sunlight, kick back and relax in the beauty of nature and shit like that. Eventually they camped out on the shores of the river Sirion, which was the border between East and West Beleriand. While they slept, Ulmo, the Valar, came up the river all ghostly to them, to give them both a vision in their dreams. While it isn't indicated precisely what Ulmo showed them, it's safe to assume the message was clear. Get your shit together because times ain't gonna stay good forever. When they woke up, neither talked to the other about their dreams because each of them believed they were the only one to get such visions. So they ended their little camping trip and started looking around for strong places to set up shop and create some havens for people to fall back to in case Morgoth decided to come out and wreck some shit again. Finrod went to live in Doriath with Thingol, being of Finarfin's sons and thusly related to Thingol, and he was floored by the awesomeness of Menegroth. They had treasuries and armories and halls of stone with lots of pillars, and he was all, yeah, I think I'd like to make something like this. He went to Thingol and opened up about the vision he received, and Thingol was like, well, there's this place up the river Narog, big-ass caves and shit. You should go there. And he sent some guides to take Finrod there. Finrod liked what he saw, and subcontracting some dwarves to help out, built a sweet stronghold in the image of Menegroth, which was called Nargothrond. The dwarves loved them some Finrod after this, and called him Felagund, which meant hewer of caves. Finrod dug this title, and went by the name of Finrod Felagund thereafter, and made his home there in Nargothrond with a bunch of his people. The dwarves also made him a necklace out of the jewels he had brought from Tirion, and it was called Nauglamir. It was some pretty dope-ass bling, and it had an enchantment on it that made it weigh almost nothing to wear. Turgon, however, remembered Tirion upon Tuna, the majestic city on a hill back in Aman, and wanted to rekindle some of that action. Unfortunately, he didn't have Thingol to come chat at, and he couldn't actually find any place which suited him. So he went back to Nevrast. A year later, Ulmo came to him again in a dream and was all, "Go check out the Vale of Sirion." Turgon went there and discovered the hidden Vale of Tumladin inside a big, strong circle of mountains. In the middle of the vale was a nice big hill of stone, and Turgon was all, "Sweet!" So he went back to Nevrast and began to plan in secret councils about the city he was going to build there. Suddenly Morgoth. Having spied the whole time on all of his enemies, Morgoth decided it was time to strike. So he made some earthquakes, which broke open fissures, from which lava poured, and orcs rushed out of the Iron Mountains to start wrecking up some shit. The most logical target was the March of Maedhros, but Fingolfin and Maedhros were not sleeping, oh no they weren't. While the other elven leaders were busy going and chasing down the random bands of orcs who were pillaging and such, Fingolfin and Maedhros pincer attacked the main host of orcs and jacked them up so thoroughly right in front of Angband that the whole attack went tits up for Morgoth. This was the third battle of Beleriand, and it was called Dagor Aglareb, the Glorious Battle. The second being Dagor Nuin Gileath, remember, and the first, well, the first battle of Beleriand. While this was indeed a stunning victory, the princes of the Noldor took it for the warning it was, and decided to tighten their shit up even further, and so started the Siege of Angband, which lasted for 400 years. While it was mostly successful, it wasn't perfect, and Morgoth was still able to send out spies and raiding parties north through the Iron Mountains, and the Noldor didn't have the forces to actually take Angband. So Morgoth went back into subtle mode, and told his orcs to bring back as many live prisoners as they could, so that Morgoth could intimidate and control them. And this he did very effectively, learning a lot about his enemies, and so thoroughly dominated by fear were the prisoners he took, didn't even need to chain them, instead sending them forth as willing servants to do his deeds. He did make one ballsy try at attacking properly once more, and sent some orcs to Hithlum, but they got pwned by the elves there, and Morgoth began to understand that the orcs were pretty shit at fighting this foe. Because that battle was so easily won, it wasn't even counted among the great battles of Beleriand. After some experimentation, however, Morgoth managed to create the first dragon, Glaurung. 100 years after the attack on Hithlum, Glaurung decided that he'd go out and screw with some elves, and that he did. But because he was still pretty young in dragon years, he got turned back without too much fuss by Fingon and a bunch of horseback archers, and ran back into Angband, not to be seen again for quite some time. This ticked Morgoth off a little because he hadn't wanted to show off that he had dragons yet. So the siege went on, and Beleriand had a nice long age of peace and prosperity. The Noldor made lots of cool things and wrote books and poems and histories of lore and such, and even practically merged with the Sindarin elves in many places. So life was good again, for now. I want to thank everybody for watching. Once again, I am Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone, and this has been All Things Lord of the Rings. Goodbye.